What's going on, everybody? Today I wanted to make a video about Dotfiles because some of the new beginner Linux users might have struggling with them, and I've seen some Dotfiles that are really chaos, and I will try to explain everything bit by bit, because if you are using like Ubuntu GNOME or I don't know, some stock Linux distro, there could be some issues because most of the pre-built distros handle all of the Dotfiles by themselves, like inputting your profiles, etc, or starting GNOME from your login shell. Therefore, I wanted to make a video about it. With your Dotfiles, you can configure your display service, your display manager, your display server and your display manager, as well as your Dotfiles and your configurations like path and etc. So I will just be telling how to configure about the X11 because I've never used Wayland in my life. However, I think they are pretty similar. If you want, you can just check out the Wayland thing. So to first start, let's talk about different shells. So in Linux, there are some type of different shells. So the first one is SH. I don't think this is used anymore. So Born Again shell, this is the stock bash stock shell of Linux. If you just installed Ubuntu or I don't know, Arch Linux, yes, Arch Linux uses bash too. This is the stock user interface for your terminals. And there's C shell, Corn shell, you don't need to use this, and there's Z shell which I'm using, and I'll explain Z shell. Why I'm using Z shell and why I encourage you to use Z shell. Actually, you can use Z shell or fish shell. I don't think they've written it here. Because Z shell is much more configurable than bash, and it has some good syntax highlighting. I think bash supports it now, but just use Z shell. Z shell is pretty good, and it's lightweight, and it's much more configurable than bash. So to get started with Z shell, we need to know some of the stuff. So let me just open my editor here and write something. So in Z shell, there are some different type of configuration files. So the first one we'll talk about is Z profile, and the other one will be the ZSRC. By the way, if you are using bash, I think this is called bash profile, and the bottom one is called .bash RC, I think. So they're pretty similar. So let's continue about working, and so let me show you my Z profile first, and after that we could talk about it. So normally you should put your Z profile in your home directory, and it's a hidden file, so it will start with a dot. So this is my Z profile. As you can see, there are lots of configurations going on here. Actually, these LF icons are deprecated. However, let me just tell you what I've put in my Z profile and why aren't these are in my .ZSRC. I will explain the difference between them, why are there two different separate files for Z shell, but let me just explain it first. So as you can see, I've set my default programs here. So my editor is neovim, my terminal is SD, browser Chromium, and reader is Zatura. This is just basics, and you need to export these if you want your Z shell to suit. So just change these options to whatever programs you are currently using. And after that, as you can see, there are lots of stuff going on here. Let me explain them first. So xdg config home is just basically a directory in your home directory, and it's called xdg config home. You can think of it like some data you want to put where your configuration files are, because if you just load everything from your home, it just gets a whole lot messier, and therefore usually these days everyone is using this hidden directory in your home directory. So xdg data home, you don't actually need this, but I've written some scripts, and I think some of the runtime paths are set here, so you could just set this. I think it automatically sets, but I'm not sure. Just set this. So xdg cache home means that where your program's cache files will be stored. So for example, if you are using Arch Linux, I don't know, or neovim, it will automatically find this cache home and put their temporary files to their cache. So actually just let's look at my cache directory. So as you can see, there are lots of stuff going on here. So let's just look at an example. So Yay here. Yay is a package manager for Arch Linux for user repositories. So Yay puts their installations in current directory. After that, it installs them. So you can think of it like as a temporary directory. Let's continue. So this Qt-QPA platform theme is that which platform theme you will be using on your Linux desktop. I think there are just 3 available now, or maybe 2. I'm not sure. I think 3. So you can use GTK2, GTK3, and I think you can use Qt5. So I'm using Qt5 CT because it's pretty configurable and it comes with a GUI with it. So as you can see, if I open my Qt5 CT, you can see that how will my pop-up windows look, what is my font, what is my icon name, etc. So therefore you can try Qt5 CT. I think it's pretty cool. And the other one is my ZSRC. So ZSRC is usually on this directory. So home config or xdg config home config and in the Z shell directory. If you want, you can change your ZSRC. However, you must always put your .ZSRC in your ZSRC directory. Just don't put it anywhere besides this. So I've exported Z shell here, and there is a directory between them. And this all my Z shell is just a Z shell extension, and you can use lots of plugins, lots of cool completion features with all my Z shell. I will explain why I put it in my all my Z shell in my ZSRC directory. Normally, if you install all my Z shell, actually let's just show it from GitHub. So you can just go and click install all my Z shell, and it will automatically create that folder in your home directory. However, when you install it, it comes with all of the available plugins, and I think that's not pretty much useful to me because I don't use like 80% of them. Therefore, I downloaded all my Z shell and I've just pre-configured it, and I just added which plugins I want to use. I'll explain them later. So this LD library path means that it's actually the Linux kernel linking path. So if you have, I don't know, like if you installed some C or C++ library ending with .o or .so, and if you install it some different path, and if you want your compiler, or I don't know, like ClaimD to be able to see it, you need to add your custom library path to your LD library path. That's just it. So GoPath and npm beam, these are just language specific things, so I won't explain them. However, to put it simply, my npm, so Node Package Manager installations, go in my local directory as well as my GoPath too. If you don't set these, I think they automatically create on your home folder. Therefore, I want them to be hidden, and I've just sent them to .local and their current directory. So I'll explain this line later. Actually, let me just explain it. So in my home and .local and bin, so let's just go there. So if you check out here, there are some different directories as well as some scripts. So if I go to my scripts directory, as you can see, there are lots of scripts I've written here, and I want to be able to use them without using the whole path. So for example, I'm in my home directory now, and let's say that I started my daemon Unicode. I want to be able to start it like this without using the whole path. Therefore, this command just converges your all directories and sources all of the files in your directories to your path. After that, I've just exported my path and add the variables which I want to use without using the full prefix. So if you add some file to your path, you can use without using the full path, just write its name and it will be run. So sudo ask pass, I don't think this is for much people because I'm using daemon, so I won't explain it. And as for these, so what are these different escape sequences with less term cap? Guys, actually this is pretty simple. So this less term cap enables you to see colored man pages. So for example, let's say that I want to open man xget window attributes, for example. So as you can see, these lines are green here, and some of them are blue, if you want stuff like this, just go and check out less turn cap with these small flags here, and you can set the ASCII escape sequence number to it. Therefore, you could see colored man pages, and I think it's pretty cool. So I'm omitting this place because it's deprecated. I'm not using that anymore. And at the end of my line, I have a small script that just switches caps lock and escape, because caps lock is pretty much useless, I think. So this is just it for Z profile. So let's continue. When is this Z profile sourced? So this is our problem now. So let me explain it. There are different types of login managers in every available Linux distro. So for example, if you are using GNOME, you will have GDM as your login manager. I am using LightDM, and it's my login manager. And these login managers are actually a different type of shell, and it's a special shell actually, which is called actually, just let me show you, which are called login shells. So what is the difference between a login shell and a standard shell? So login shell is actually a different type of special shell that just runs once when you enter your password and login. So for example, you are on GDM on your login screen. You've just written your password and your user ID. After that, when you press enter, it automatically sources your Z profile. However, I think GDM might be sourcing Z profile, but LightDM normally doesn't supporting Z profile. They will use .profile for this. And as you can see in my .profile, I've just said that if in my home directory Z profile exists, just source this Z profile. So this will just be run once. Why is this good? This is because I don't want to change my path every time I open my shell. So this is a lot of stuff going on here and a lot of paths. So as you can see, if I just write echo path here, like this, this is just a lot of path, and I don't want to source it every time I open my shell. So therefore, you need to think about it. So what programs or what exports do you want to use just for once, not every time you open up a terminal? Just put all of that programs in your Z profile. So let's continue. So as I've told you before, your Z shell configurations need to be in this directory. However, you can change this, but I think this is just nice. And in the Z shell directory, there is a special file called .ZSRC. So let's check out it. By the way, the difference between Z profile and .ZSRC is whenever you open up a terminal, it will automatically source your ZSRC. So for example, if you change some stuff in your ZSRC folder, it will automatically be done whenever you open up a new terminal. I'm sorry. However, if you want to change your Z profile, you need to log out and log in, or otherwise you can source it actually. So this is the difference between them. ZSRC sources every time whenever you open up a new terminal. This is accurate for bash too. And your bash profile or Z profile just sources one time, and that's just on your login screen. Display manager. So let's continue. What are all these stuff? Like, they are weird. So this PS1 just explains that how will your here look. I'm sorry, I didn't remember the name of this. So how will this look? You can in Z shell add it with PS1, and you can just check out the internet for them. I didn't write this myself, obviously. Just check it, and also you can use my Z shell for this too, and choose whatever you like. I like simplicity, therefore I'm just using this. So yellow color, blue color, and the current directory. So let's continue. This is actually a pretty good line, so let me explain you what this is doing. So as I've told you before, I've changed my my Z shell, and let's just go to my Z shell directory. So I think it's in config Z shell and my Z shell. So as you can see, in your my Z shell folder, there's a folder called plugins. And if I cd to that directory, normally if you installed my Z shell by default and you didn't clean up most of the directories and plugins by yourself, this folder will contain like 80 or 100 plugins. And since there are 80 or 100 plugins, you need to write with hand which plugins you want. So normally you do something like this. So plugins equals, and so for example, like Golang, I don't know, systemd, timer, etc. However, since I've cleaned up most of the plugins and these are just the plugins I'm using, so this just echoes my plugins directory with ls, and after that it just attains them to an array. Therefore, if I add a new folder, if I add a new plugin to all my Z shell plugins, my command will automatically detect it. Therefore, I don't need to change my plugins every time I've added a new plugin. You can just cheat sheet from all my Z shell directory if you want. So let's continue. So this autoload-u component enables your auto tab complete. So tab complete is just looking like this. As you can see, commands pop up and you can traverse between them. After that, these are just configuration options for my component. So this bind keys, in my complete menu, when I press tab, I've added my Vim bindings. If you're using Vim, you can add these too, to be able to navigate between your auto-completion support plugins. And if you just want to use arrows, just use them. You don't need these 4 lines if you just want to use arrows. So I'm omitting this because this is just my specific function. So to put it basically, when I'm in a terminal, as you can see, I've binded key Ctrl R. This is Ctrl, by the way. Ctrl R to this function, and if I hit Ctrl and R here, it will automatically run my LFCD function. Actually, this is running different now because I think I might have a plugin now. However, it's not much important. So let's continue. So as you can see, I've binded a new thing here. So if I hit Ctrl T, it will open up a new terminal. By the way, let me just show it to you first. This T is different. It opens up a script for myself, so you can just forget about these 2 lines. You probably mostly don't need them. So this here, you can omit these 2. It will automatically set whatever file I am currently using to my title. So for example, if I go to my desktop directory, it will automatically write desktop here. There are plugins that actually I think default on my Z shell does this. However, I didn't like the way it does it, and I've just changed it. You can just use the default one if you want. So setup auto cd, this command makes you navigate between folders without writing cd commands. So for example, if I just write desktop and enter, it will automatically change my directory without writing cd desktop like this. Alright, so let's continue. So if you are using a my Z shell dim, just be sure to write this Z shell dim before sourcing your my Z shell directory. After that, this hist size and save hist means that how many commands that my Linux system will store in my history, and this append history means that go on appending between different terminals. So for example, if you open up 3 terminals and if you write commands, just append all of them in a single folder. So alright, so this changed my cursor shape for different Vim modes. So for example, now as you can see, actually it's not much important. You can omit these 2. These are just some pretty tweaks for myself. So load aliases, I will explain them too. So I have a folder called Alias RC and it's in my z.dir folder, and if this folder exists, just source that folder. I'll explain Alias RC in a minute now. So I've just put in a note here, it's not important. So I'm sourcing my Z shell bash script at the end of my file. Why am I doing this actually? You need to source my Z shell bash script if you want to use its plugins. However, if you are using current pre-default installation, it will be in your home directory, okay? It will not be in your z.dir. However, if you want, you can just move it. So these sources are for Z shell, fast syntax highlighting plugin. I think you should install this plugin too. I am not sure that on my Z shell includes this. You might need to download this file from somewhere else if you are using a different distribution. However, if you are using Arch Linux, you can just use the simple our repository to install this user repository. I like fast syntax highlighting better because it highlights much better than the normal highlighting plugin. Therefore, just use this. So bind key -v means that I want to use vim mode in my Z shell terminal. Just forget about this. And this says that if I hit Ctrl and E in my terminal, so like this, it will automatically open up a new vim file. So for example, vim a.cpp, and after I exit this, it will automatically copy it to my current terminal. If you want to edit different lines, or for example, if you've written a bash script, if you want to write, just hit Ctrl E and write your bash script and hit enter to run it. So let's continue. So this weird thing is actually shift tab, so you can think of it as shift tab, and it will say that auto suggest accept. What's auto suggest? So auto suggest is actually as you can see, there is some ghost text here, and if I hit shift tab, it will automatically complete that ghost text. So let's continue. So this Powerline daemon is just a plugin I'm using. If you want, you can use this too. Actually, this is just it. These are for my configuration files. You don't probably need these. So let's continue with Alias RC. What is Alias RC? So Alias RC is in my Z shell directory. So Alias RC is where I contain my aliases. You can just put them in your ZSRC if you want. However, I have lots of aliases and it just gets kind of messy. Therefore, I'm just using a file like this. So, for example, ls is alias to this. So L is color ls, lt, blah blah. I've just put in my aliases here. You can use a file like this to be much more organized. So let's continue. I'm omitting input RC because probably you won't need it. Let's continue. So as you can see, my program configurations are in here too, as well as my neovim lf. You need to put most of the configuration files in your .config directory. Now we are entering the phase about display managers. So whenever you are entering up a X11 server, it will automatically run your .xinitrc with startx command. So if you write startx and enter in a terminal, it will automatically run your .xinitrc if it exists. So what's in my xinitrc? Let's take a look. So in my xinitrc, I'm sourcing a file which is going to .config and explore profile. After my scripts have been run, I am running DWM as an SSH agent. So DWM is my display manager. I'm sorry, not display manager. DWM is my window manager. If you are using, for example, i3 gaps, you just write SSH agent i3 gaps, or you can write a while loop. If you are not using SSH agent, just use SSH agent. It's just a simple line. So let's look at my X profile now. What's in my X profile? So .config and and X profile. So as you can see in my X profile, I am configuring my X resources. What's X resources if you don't know? X resources just set my color schemes and my cursor for my current desktop. So for example, as you can see, my cursor is not the default one, and I have changed this cursor in my X resources. You can put this X resources anywhere you want. However, be sure to source it before your window manager or I don't know GNOME starts. After that, these are my scripts. So set bg sets my background. So pcom is my compositor. As you can see, when I change windows, it changes transparency and it just blurs it some little bit. So that's pcom. Dunst is for my notification. So for example, my sound notification, or I don't know, for example, if I just click here, these are configured with Dunst. If you are using GNOME, it's just built in. So xset rrate changes my cursor speed. So for example, the 30 here means that after the initial start of your cursor, it will automatically in 30 milliseconds, I think, go up to the next line. And this 250 is a threshold. You need to hold your key 250 milliseconds to be able to get this 30 milliseconds. So you can just think of as a starting threshold for this, and after starting it will automatically just use the rightmost one. After that, this unclutter is just removes mouse when I'm not using. So for example, if I just drop my mouse, it will automatically disappear after some time. So it's just 5 seconds or something like that. I don't know. If you're not using a window manager, you won't need it probably. So this is for the basics of Dotprofiles actually. Actually, I think I've covered most of the stuff. So you need to know some different things. So login shell. Just you need to source your Z profile on your login shell. It will just source one time in your login. Your ZSRC always sources whenever you open up a new terminal. And you need to set your paths if you want to use your custom scripts, etc. And I think it's just it. By the way, if you are using Z shell, try to use my Z shell. It's pretty good. This is just it, guys. So if you have any more questions or any problems, just let me know in the comments. So see you guys in the next tutorial. Take care.